Hello, everybody. Welcome to
Hi.
the Found in Translation live show for our February book, which was Small Country by Gael Faye, which the lovely Annie has right there. So if you
Yes.
don't know, so if you don't know what Found in Translation book club is, it's a booktube book club where we read a translated book every month. And so Small Country was our February pick and was translated from French originally. I guess, guys, if we want to go around and introduce ourselves and our channels, and then as we kind of set it up last month, give our rating. We'll put each other on the spot and just give our rating to start it off.
Okay. Well, my name is Annie from Annie's Book Nook. I'm really excited that we started this book club, and I personally gave this 5 stars. Yeah, I know there's been a little bit of talk in the Discord that we'll talk about later, but yeah, I'm really curious to hear all of your thoughts on it. What about you, Noelle?
Hi, I'm Noelle. My channel is Noelle 7 Pages. That is Sunday. She's eating her breakfast now that the camera is on. I don't know why or how she knows, but anyways, this is a classic thing she does every time. I'm in between still 3 and 4 stars. I feel like I'm leaning more towards 4, but I don't know. I'm still maybe I'll do a 3.5, but I'm still marinating.
And if you're here, you're already on my channel, but I'm Brittany from Literarily Smitten. And I actually gave it 3 stars. I wanted to enjoy it more than I think I ended up enjoying it. Like I had high expectations for it, but I was glad to see that in the Discord people felt similarly, at least the people that I was talking to. So that was very exciting. So it does seem like we have a nice spread of ratings
Yeah.
here.
I love when that happens.
So lots of thoughts. And I see Marie Luke in the comment section. So hello.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yay.
So we know
Good. I'm not the only one.
No, you're not by far. So I guess we'll start off. What were your initial impressions? What made you give it a 5 star? What are you still marinating over, Noelle? Like what's the deal, guys?
Personally, I mean, I'm full disclosure, I read this and finished it at I think it was like the 1st or 2nd of February. So I'm trying my best. But I personally really enjoy learning about this period of history around like Burundi and Rwanda. And I've read a couple of other books about it, and it's just something I'm personally really interested in. So I think because of that, I kind of wanted to rate it higher just because I really enjoyed learning about it a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. I also liked that it was told from a child's perspective as like a historical fiction novel. I thought that that was, well, I guess it's not historical yet because it was in the 90s, but you know what I mean?
I kept thinking about that too, yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was an interesting way to tell the story about something that was so horrific. Just it kind of zoomed in on like how it can affect how do I say this, like just like the individual, you know. Yeah, but I'm very curious to understand where the 3 stars are coming from too.
I will say that I read it on audio, which I know some other people in the Discord
I did too.
struggled. Okay, so that we're all in agreement. And I didn't think I didn't think it was a bad audiobook. It just was like very I mean, it wasn't even monotone, but I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and this one just was not. The audiobook specifically did not feel like it was anything to write home about, and there were certain very intense scenes that was kind of just read any other way, as if you were like reading a grocery list, and that was a real contrast to me that didn't make a lot of sense. So didn't like the confusion that I felt because of that. Also, I had to keep reminding myself, oh my God, this is a novel and not like a memoir or something, because it felt very like, this is what's happening. I didn't feel a lot of and this could be from the audiobook experience also. I just felt like we were being told the story and the events as they were happening. I didn't really feel like it was I didn't get the vibe of like a fictional journey of storytelling. It just felt like, this is happening. Okay, next thing, this next event, this also happened. This is the fallout of those events, which is not necessarily a bad thing, especially in like a book like this, where it's about war and like very heavy things. But I don't know, it read more like a memoir or a nonfiction to me, even though it wasn't. And that also kind of threw me for a loop too, combined with the interesting creative choices for the narrator.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I don't know if this was purely because I was listening to the audiobook rather than reading the physical book, but a lot of what Noelle was saying also kind of resonates with me, as far as like how the narration was done. But I also I did feel like I struggled to be able to differentiate a lot of the characters from one another in the audiobook. Like I didn't get a very distinct feeling of all of these sort of minor characters within Gabby's life. And so that to me kind of threw me a little bit. But I also there were some beautiful lines, and there were some descriptions in there that I was just like, A++, chef's kiss, like the description in certain parts. But it to me, I think also because I'm not someone who tends to enjoy the sort of narrative voice being a child, that's not something that usually works for me. And so I had some moments where I was just like, I kind of would have liked if it was the adult reflecting a little bit more on what was going on, rather than being in the limited POV of this child who obviously is going to have a very limited understanding of the world and everything that's going on. I kind of wanted more, I guess, heft from it in some places, especially in the beginning. The second half of the book I felt like was much more interesting to me than the first.
Yeah.
Someone hasn't finished the book yet. That's okay. I just finished it this morning.
I finished it today. Yep.
Oh no.
I was thinking about this, that the translation I'm sure has something to do with it. And I was wondering if anyone was gonna have read it in its actual French. So that's really interesting. And I'm glad that you loved it in the original language it was published in, because I think there could be some of that in the way that it was translated, where I lost some of the immersion that I like to feel in fiction novels like this, where I felt like there was this kind of the word that comes to mind is clinical separation, like when you're reading a nonfiction book, where it's just kind of laid out in front of you without a lot of the kind of immersive side-by-side feelings, and that could 100% be from the translation.
Yeah. Which I know some people from the Discord had brought that up too, asking whether they thought the feelings of vagueness or disconnection that they were feeling were part of the actual translation into English.
I wonder about that too. the Discord was really validating because I
Yeah.
was like, is this just me? Am I just not smart enough for this book? Or okay, other people kind of felt similarly was good to know. But it also is tough because like all of the issues that I had with it are like post-production. Like none of it is the author's fault, you know? It's like maybe the translation was off or I didn't love the audiobook experience, but the actual like story, the actual novel, loved it. So I'm like having a hard time putting those two things together in my brain.
Yeah, that's fair. That's always something to take into consideration too. I think like sometimes an audiobook is not the best way to consume a particular book just because of like the narrative choices that are made by the reader. Like some of those intense scenes, I was like, you literally read it like it was your grocery list. Okay.
Yeah. That is a choice.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, okay.
Oh god. Yeah, that's funny because I usually read like everything on audio and like only this one pretty much I read physically, so
Of
I'm
course.
kind of glad I did.
Yeah.
Okay, you're like halfway through in chapter 10, right? Not
so.
quite, maybe?
Like a third, maybe?
Maybe closer to a third. You're getting there.
Super visceral. Okay.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I always like when there are people who've read the book in its original language.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because that is not something that I could do for basically anything. I could probably try it in French, but it would probably take me like 2-3 months to actually get through
right.
it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm very rusty on the French. So there's that. Yes, it does, for sure. But yeah, I mean, what were some of the moments in the book that really like got you? Like, I feel like there were moments in this book that were highly visceral, and just powerful. Were there any that really stood out for you over the course of the book?
The two moments that I remember the best are the one where his bike is stolen and they're gonna try and get it back, and I forget exactly what happened, but someone like an adult tells him like just let them keep it because they're poor and we can get it again and they can't, and like it kind of teaches him a lesson. And the other moment was when his friend has been writing to his, I know some people haven't finished it, but has been writing to his mom, and it was kind of a mystery where his mom was when they find out.
Yeah.
Should I say? Yeah.
I think so.
That was really
spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. They find out that she is dead, and that was really emotional. Yeah, so those are the two moments I remember the best.
You've gotten permission to spoil it.
What about you guys?
The bike scene I remember really vividly. That's like because to me, Brittany, you kind of mentioned how the book was like the two halves were really different, and I felt like the first half we get a lot of Gabby as like a kid, like living a pretty comfortable childhood, and the bike scene was like one of those moments where his bike is stolen and he gets these adults to help him go find his stolen bike, which already is like access that a lot of people wouldn't have when they're kids like that. And they find the bike, and it's this like man who's like, oh, I bought this from someone and I saved up for a long time to buy it for my son. Like he's going to be so disappointed. And Gabby was like, well, that's not my problem. It's my bike. And this other adult is like, hey, just let him keep it. And Gabby is like, no, like just because he really wants it. And so he makes them take the bike home. And then he's like reflecting, and he's like, oh no, well now I feel all of this shame about it. And so he tells those adults, I've decided I'm never going to touch that bike again because of the way that I acted. And the grown up literally says, like, you're a spoiled brat. And, you know, that's like the first half of the book. And then the second half is kind of his like cozy childhood unraveling. And I was thinking about that bike scene a lot, and that like shame that he learned or, you know, processed a lot during that.
Mm-hmm.
Also that letter did really good. And also Gabby's mom's like mental break at the end, where he overhears her like whispering to Anna about everything, like cleaning up the bloodstains, and then she disappears, and we get to see her like again, like right at the very end, and she thinks he's Christian, is like, that really got me too.
Yeah. We have the stolen bike story was the favorite part of the book, so we have that there. I mean, I think for me, the two scenes that stuck out, if I go in like chronological order, I think in the very first part of the book, and I think it's like very early, Gabby is having his father explain to him why the Hutu and Tutsi are at like war, and the father, and he's like asking like, is it because of land? And the father's like, no, because they own the same land. And then he kind of, is it like religion? And he goes down this list, and then his father just very dryly says, no, it's because their noses are different. And so then like he and his friend like spend all this time like studying people's noses and trying to figure out like, oh no, who's like, are they Hutu or Tutsi? And that stuck with me, because like in this weird way, like the father distilled war down to something so simplistic that a child could understand it, but also like basically told you like this war didn't really have a true meaning or like a true reason for actually happening. It was that kind of ridiculous. Like saying, oh, it's based on the shape of someone's nose. But then the scene with Gabby's mother, when she kind of unravels, that to me was, I think, so powerfully written. And like you said, like seeing her kind of come back at the very end of the book, and so getting some sense of where she's disappeared to and what's happened to her. And I think it's been like 15 years or something from the point.
Yeah, there's a lot of time, like 15 or 20.
Yeah, so that to me was a point that really stuck out, because I do think it was one of those moments where the realities of war and sort of the goriness of it was really like put out there, whereas I think in some other instances it was a little more vague, or it didn't really, because of how Gabby grew up, wasn't necessarily impacting him the same way as if he had been in like Rwanda. So so that to me.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Kicking Francis out of the party. Yeah.
Yeah. Poor Francis.
Was that when his lighter got stolen? That was like so specific, but the lighter comes back at a scene at the end that was also really gnarly, where they light that car on fire with like the man.
Oh yeah.
But there, I think that was the same scene, because it's like, oh, it's a party, and then there's this scuffle, and then
it's like
through your child's eyes, it's like, oh, we went back to partying, but then you as the reader are left being like, oh, that was pretty messed up.
Yeah. 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 I feel like there were a lot of really like powerful scenes right at the end of the book.
Yeah.
Like there were so many of these intense scenes right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Gabby's mom was kind of a boss in that scene. Just she was kind of great. But yeah, I mean, what did you think about, because we've mentioned this, what did you think about the way sort of the narrative tone or the story seems to shift and almost be split into two parts? Annie, was it actually split into two parts in the book, or does it just kind of go?
Yeah, no. For me, I agree with you. I think
Okay.
it did have kind of a very clear break where like in the beginning he's quite innocent and like kind of just in his own little world, and then like towards the middle it kind of gets more serious and like the war is happening, and he's realizing that things are not like he thought. Because I also found it really interesting that his dad would always tell him that like he shouldn't talk about politics, right? So he didn't really know about anything that was going on as a kid, and was like a younger kid, and he had to learn when it was like right outside his door. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I also
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. No, I just want to mention that his pen pal in France, with the French girl, I thought that was an interesting addition, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too. They only exchanged like a few letters, right? But by the end of the book, he's like convinced that he loves this French girl, but he doesn't want to tell his friends because they'd make fun of him. And it's like he like idealizes her, I think, as like this. She lives in this magical world where everyone is safe and she gets to do these fun things with her family and right to him, where it's like his link to like a world of like safety and comfort again. And I think he attaches that like, oh, I want that, I guess I love her, is how I kind of analyzed those letters.
Yeah. I kind of took the same thing away from it. I think it was him kind of creating this fantasy around this girl based on his own sort of preconceptions of what living where she lives must be like, and how it must be better and different because it's safer. And I do think it was interesting because I remember like as a kid, I remember us doing like pen pal letters in class. And so it was like this funny moment where I was like, I can relate, because I definitely remember having like a pen pal in some foreign country that I think we exchanged like 2 or 3 letters. Because it was some weird like learn how to write a letter exercise that we were doing. So there was that random connection and tangent for me. But I mean, for me, when like going back to the split, I feel like I could almost say exactly when I think like the transition was. And for me, it was very like, it felt like right when they start talking about the assassination, that's when it's like, okay, everything has gotten intense, everything has gotten real. It's like whatever this little bubble that Gabby as a child has been living in, it has popped. It like the war is on his front doorstep, and now like reality is kind of slipping in, whether he and his family want it to or not. So that for me was where that shift happened. It's like there was a definite in my mind when I'm reading. That's when the tone for me and the narration seemed to shift significantly.
That for sure. And I think the one for me is maybe a little before that, where it's like election day. Is that right?
Yeah.
Before? And because we see it through him as a child, he's like, I think he even says like, I don't know what we're electing, but everyone's really excited about it. And then he talks about how he goes and they like collect some like souvenirs of like discarded ballots or something.
Right.
And then like the day after, it's like weirdly quiet. And
Right.
and his dad is like, oh, thank goodness you're home. Like, we don't know, the phones are ringing, like we don't know what's going on. And to me, that was like, wait, what is going on? And that's where it shifted for me.
Wasn't there like some line in that same section too? I don't remember who said it, but there like someone basically was just like, oh, you don't win elections unless you have the support of the army. Like, just pointing out, like, just kind of how corrupt and messed up, like, politics are in this time period. I just for whatever reason, that comment stuck in my mind quite a bit.
Yeah, there was a lot of good one-liners like that, where over the course of the book, he was realizing, like you were saying, that I never learned about any of this stuff, and maybe I can't be neutral. Like some of his other friends are telling him, maybe was it Gino at one point, who's like, oh, there is no neutral in war. Like you're on one side or you're on the other. And the rest of there's that like whole part where Gabby's just like thinking on that of like, well, then which side am I on, and what do I do about that? And yeah.
We have more talk of Laura's letters.
Yes, I thought that too. I'm like, how is a kid writing these letters?
Yeah, I agree.
Do we, like, not to go like crazy English major mode, but do we think there's a reason for that? Why Gabby's letters would be so, like, not childlike? Can we think of anything? Like, what justification there might be?
I mean, it could be a way to show that he's had to grow up faster or think about things more deeply than like, because he even made a point to say that she writes with pink marker and it's the letters are like perfumed, and meanwhile he's like writing about these like very existentialist ideas back to his like 10-year-old pen pal or whatever. And she would reply and be like, oh, you're so silly, you know. So I think it's kind of like a mirror almost to show that they're the same age, they're pen pals, but have extremely different lives and therefore are thinking about very different things.
Yeah, I think that is a very good interpretation of that. Couldn't say it better.
Thank you.
Good job, Noah.
Do I get extra credit?
Yeah, Noelle gets a
star. Oh gosh. Yeah, I don't know. I really liked the book. I don't know. I feel like on the Discord, like I saw these people saying that they didn't like it as much as they thought they would, and I'm curious to know how many read the audio versus the physical, because I really think that could have been the issue. Because I mean, I see, like, other than that, did you have like other content-wise issues with the book?
Content-wise, I thought it was interesting. Like, I thought the whole thing was interesting. For me, it really was, and it could easily be because of the audiobook or because of the translation. But I did feel disconnected or disjointed, and as I said earlier, like, I would have liked a little bit more of what was going on in the world to kind of seep in earlier, because I do feel like there wasn't, like, this was brewing, but it didn't really get much play in that early section, which I think was a definite choice to make this journey more sort of like tangible, go from this almost idyllic childhood to a war-torn childhood, and to show that. But for me, it was just a case of not really connecting as much as I would have liked to overall with the book.
Okay.
But I found everything interesting. Like, that wasn't the problem at all. And as I said, there were some beautiful, like, lines out of that thing. Like, I remember there was at one point, I think, like, a vein in someone's neck was described as like an inner tube or something like that. Like, there were just these vivid images throughout that I was like, oh wow, this is this is incredible. But yeah, it was just for me that disconnect, unfortunately. What about you,
Mhm.
Noelle?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I think I really liked the initial like prologue where he's an adult and he's talking about
Mm-hmm.
how he's become this like bachelor and he like seduces his suitors and he's like, but I grew up really differently. And then the next like 200 pages is the book. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have been really powerful for me if we would get like kind of like you said earlier, Brittany, like back and forth between, because we got a little bit of adult Gabby,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
and between every few chapters it would be like, smashed up to like his adult life going through normal life, and then the next chapter is like being a kid living through a war and all of those things. I think that would have made the
Mm.
contrast and like the impact a little bit more clear to me, to see post-war effects on him as an adult and like during the war as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of sandwiched at the very end where he goes
Mm-hmm.
back and sees his friend. uh I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more from an adult Gabby, I think, but that's not
Yeah.
fair because that's just stuff that wasn't in the book.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
No,
It
I
was
agree with
short.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you there actually. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it is such a short book.
yeah,
Yes.
it
So
really
Yes.
is.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
No.
It would have been nice to have a little bit more, just like explanation, um, and like, yeah, context as to what was actually going on and how it affected everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I think too, like, it would just be interesting to, like, because you get the sense that Gabby, because of how the majority of the book is sandwiched between adult Gabby,
hmm,
um, you get the sense that the whole thing is meant to be reflective,
yeah,
in a way, but you but I feel like there isn't a ton of reflection because it of the fact that it is child Gabby that is basically leading the story
Mm.
for the majority of it. So to your point, Noelle, like I feel like it might have read differently. It might have um, been a higher rating for me if we'd had like those insertions of adult Gabby at certain points just to kind of make some sort of adult statement or observation, which again maybe not it might not be fair because like this is what I want the book to have,
I know.
um but but I do think that that might have made a difference for me, especially as someone who doesn't tend to like sort of child narrators in
Mm.
general. Like that is not something that necessarily works for me, like
Yeah.
probably 95% of the time it doesn't. so so
That's fair.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so that's that's my thoughts on that. um but Annie, I mean, for you, what was, because you and Marie Luke both gave it 5 stars. I mean, what were those like standout moments for you that made you be like, aha, this is definitely a 5 star? Were those moments, or was it just the entirety of the book? You were just like, I love it, I love it, I love it, don't want it to end.
Oh gosh. I don't know. Now I'm rethinking it because like
Oh
I
no.
Don't,
I
no.
know I also gave our book last month, Breasts and Eggs, 5 stars, and like
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that book more, and like I remember more of it, even though it's been longer since I read that one. But I don't know. um, maybe like if this was out of 10, I would rate this like 7.5 or 8 out of 10. I don't know. Like it's
Yeah.
definitely it's not like a favorite book of mine or like a perfect book in any way. I just when I was reading it, I was like it didn't feel like it was a slog to get through.
Yeah,
like,
no,
somehow.
it definitely didn't feel like a slog at all.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just enjoyed the entire experience. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you said that this
No.
is a time period that you're interested in, and that have you read other books, like other fiction about it?
I yeah. Let me see on my Goodreads list.
We're
I read
digging deep.
one more recently. What was it called? I will get back
Yeah.
in a few minutes.
Searching for Goodreads.
Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Annie.
I know.
No, you're good. You're good.
I did have to keep reminding myself that no, this isn't historical fiction. This happened during my lifetime. You know.
Yeah.
See, I have a whole feeling about that.
I know you do.
I have a whole feeling.
I was teeing you up for that. There you are.
Because I literally had a video on this about like trying to figure out what the definition of like historical fiction is, because I think it's like the Historical Novel Society is like basically it has to be World War II or earlier to be considered historical fiction, and I'm like,
really?
false. Yeah, it's like I'm just like, no. Like there can be history that takes place in my lifetime. Because like I'm always reminded of like those memes and things where people are like, it crushes my soul to realize that 30 years ago wasn't 1970. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like it doesn't bother me to think that history is happening in my own lifetime, or that it could be considered historical fiction, because even I read a book on the Bosnian War, and I would consider that historical fiction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you could consider this historical fiction in some cases. I think perhaps if it had a little bit more world building to it, because I think that's a major contributor to historical fiction. But I'm not opposed to classifying this as historical fiction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Annie, did you figure it out yet? You still scrolling?
Still scrolling. I have
It's a
too many
mystery.
books. I'm sorry. There was a nonfiction one. I can't remember. Yeah, but I mean, it was nonfiction. I can't remember the name of it, and I can't find it. But it had like, oh my gosh, so sorry.
Like
It's gonna bother me now.
That's definitely happened to me.
This is really bothering me now. It had like a do not disturb sign like you find in a hotel with like the Rwandan flag colors on it, but I can't remember the name of the book.
Oh. I feel like my point of reference was Hotel Rwanda. That's literally my point of reference. Yeah, I was just like, I obviously knew this happened, but it was never covered in school for me at all.
Yeah.
Me neither, yeah.
And I definitely haven't read much about it, if anything, apart from like going down a research rabbit hole thanks to that movie. So
yeah,
I definitely like to read more.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'd be kind of interested to see if there are like any actual memoirs out there, because like Noelle, you were saying you kind of kept having to remind yourself this wasn't a memoir, because it kind of felt that way, but to actually read like a memoir about it would be really interesting.
Yeah, actually I should look at that.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. What else, you guys? Do you have any questions for our captive audience or for us?
Before we do that, you want a memoir about the Rwandan massacre? The Girl Who Smiled Beads by Clementine
I've heard of that book.
Yeah, it's I read it. It's really good. That's not the book I was thinking of. There's a different book. I still don't remember that one. But The Girl Who Smiled Deep is really, really good.
I've actually seen that cover before. I can like visualize it. It's like off-whitish with like the lines of beads across it or something.
Yeah, it's red and white.
Yeah, I can visualize the book. I have definitely seen it somewhere. Did not know that was what it was about. But I have seen it. Oh, that's a good recommendation, Annie.
Yeah, I got one.
Gold star for Annie.
I love being on Brittany's channel. It feels like school.
Yeah.
Like, class is now in session, guys. I'm sorry.
Professor Brittany.
I did not have alcohol today, so like you don't get tipsy Brittany on my channel.
Maybe next time.
Maybe. I was literally curled up in bed before this. I'm just like, oh man. But yeah, what other things stuck out to you with the book in general? Because I feel like it was a short book, but there were moments that packed real punches, whether it was the writing or certain characters. Were there any sort of characters that you like just adored?
I liked the twins because they were always like, he had these friends that he just referred to as like the twins, and they would always like kind of lie about things, but then he was never really sure if they were lying, and then they would say like on God or like like we swear on God or something. They would like end their stories with, and I don't know why, I just like loved them.
Yeah, no, that I like. There are these characters that I thought they were so funny when they came up, and then I couldn't remember like what the situation was, and that was it. Whatever that little catchphrase was.
Yeah.
Yes, this story.
Yeah.
That's exactly where the twins are stuck in my mind at the circumcision story.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So we all have that. That was interesting. I was not expecting that.
No, yeah, that was just wild.
Yeah, that was a wild one. And then we have Marie Luke.
Oh yeah.
The Greek neighbor, yes, whose name I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
It was very long.
It was very long.
And
I don't remember the name.
Whole book when he was leaving, right? Because she was like, there's no time to copy this down for you. Just take it all. You'll understand it later.
Yeah. For sure. I liked I did like the mother character quite a bit, as I said before. I thought it was interesting to see her dynamic with Gabby's father.
Yeah.
At the beginning,
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
That whole thing, like it, and that uncle that was it an uncle that came at the beginning of the book, like the father's uncle or someone. There was some relative that came. And there was like dinner, and the mother told him off, I think.
I am not remembering this.
I don't remember.
there was some relative that came and was basically being called a colonizer, I think, by the mother, but I could be completely misconstruing that, so don't quote me. A friend of the father. Yes, okay. Thank you for clarifying, because I was just like, I know I didn't think I was making this up. Yay.
Yeah, the mother, she was a really interesting character. And like we mentioned, like when she told off the father, that was very powerful.
Yeah, that was.
She was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's
Oh.
This was very early in the book.
yeah.
Okay.
Very, very early. Okay. Thank you guys in the comments for validation. Because I was like, did I read a different book? It's quite possible, because you know I'm always reading multiple books at once. And yay, someone else who agrees with me on the historical fiction event
I
thing.
love it. Yes.
I mean, I agree with you too. Like, even though I was alive, well, actually, I don't think I was, but I was close. I was almost there. It is history. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it is. Like, I feel like contemporary is more like to do with the characters and not so much to do with like events. I don't know. I don't know. Might be starting a debate. I don't know. But
Annie's about to have a debate with me. No. No, I do think there is something that like sets like what is classified as contemporary apart. And like I think to me it's more like contemporary doesn't necessarily deal with, I think what you're getting at, it doesn't necessarily deal with actual events that are taking place. Like it deals more with the lives of the characters themselves. Like it's a little bit more focused in that way. Like I do think historical tends to bring in a lot of the outside world.
I just Googled it, Brittany. You're going to love this definition. Are you ready?
Okay. Tell me.
Contemporary literature is literature which is generally set after World War II.
Oh,
subgenres of contemporary literature include contemporary romance.
Oh man, no, I don't hate you. But yeah, no, that's like literally, I think it's called the Historical Novel Society. It's like historical fiction is only 1945 and earlier, which I'm just like,
what?
I'm like, what about Vietnam? What about
I thought it was the
Korean
80s.
War? I'm just like the Cold War. Like I'm very confused as to how none of that could be a historical setting. But yeah, there's like a whole thing as to why the Historical Novel Society says I am wrong, but it's a hill I will die on.
I think you're right.
Thank you, Annie. Yes. I think that was actually an example I brought up in my video. That was like, how can we not consider like 9/11 history?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like if it focuses on an important historical event, then I think it counts as historical fiction regardless of when it's set, you know?
Yeah. I would agree with that. So we've gone down a rabbit hole. It feels very fitting for my channel, since basically the majority of what I read is historical fiction. But yeah, no, I think everyone has made some really good points. And I feel like we do have a few people who agree with me. So that makes me happy. So, I mean, we've already kind of talked about the end of the book a little bit. But what did you think about kind of how it wraps up and that sort of time jump and now returning to like adult Gabby? Like how did you take the end? What did you think?
I need to refresh myself.
I felt like the kind of climax was this moment where they find this man who was apparently one of the men who killed their friend's father.
Mm-hmm.
And so they like trap him in this car, and the gang leader hands this like open lighter to Gabby and is like, you do this or I personally will go kill your family right now. And he's like, well, I know that my sister and my father are like at home asleep on the sofa. So he just felt like he had to. And then he's like, I immediately like vomited like on his shoes. And then that was like, I think that's like almost the end, and then the rest of it is, oh well, then they leave, right?
Yeah.
And then we get him as an adult again, and then
Yeah.
like briefly he's talking about how as an adult he's reflecting on how their father died shortly after they like left, like right when we kind of like cut off and go back to adult Gabby, and it just felt like, wow, like to me that was pretty striking to say like the story just kept going, even though we chose to end it at that point. But yeah, I liked the way that it wrapped up. It felt very like, I don't like when books about war are wrapped up with a pretty bow. And it still felt very like raw and real and hard hitting and all that stuff.
Yeah. There's a line where he says that he felt like he had been in exile from his country, but looking back, yes, that line gave me chills. And this is what I was talking about, where there were some like zingers even in the translation. So I would I can't, like, reading that in the like original language, I feel like it must pack even like an even bigger punch. But there were certain lines like that one that definitely got to me and made me be like, yeah, Gael Faye knows how to write. Like he's not joking around. But there were quite a few of those lines for me. What about you, Annie?
Well, while you were talking, I just reread the ending. Yeah. I mean, this. I guess part of the reason why I rated it 5 stars is that I just like sad books and like really hard hitting books, and this was really like a very hard hitting ending. Because it ends with him killing someone. And you go, like, not that you're growing up with him because it takes place in like a kind of short period of time, but like you see this loss of innocence in Gabby. I like how it ended. I think it was, like Noelle said, it wasn't wrapped up in a pretty bow, but like the time jump kind of shows like, well, his life did go on, and you know, it happened. What happened, and he did what he had to do to protect his family. It was sad, but I like sad.
No, I like sad too. That's kind of my preference in most books, to be quite honest. I do like I kept seeing people talking about how this book made them cry, so I was prepared because I cry at like commercials. Unfortunately, I did not cry here, but I definitely got emotional. So there was definitely that. But I do think like the way the book ended really like drove home the point. This was a book really about lost innocence and like a childhood interrupted by war, in a way. And like I think that was one of the really powerful sort of aspects of it, because you do kind of see this erosion of innocence over the course of the book. Like if you look back to where it starts, and like his father, like he has no idea about politics, and his father's telling him it's because of noses, and he's like having these weird interactions with the twins. We're telling him a circumcision story and like all this stuff, and like it slowly, like if you visualized it, it would just be like this erosion, until you get to the very, very end where the innocence is completely gone because he's killed someone. So he's really part of the war itself. So that to me was really, really interesting. And we have Chloe Ray gave it 4 stars. Okay, Trouble in the Beginning. Yeah, to me the beginning was interesting, but I do feel like the second half was stronger, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And then,
I'm so glad you brought that up. I wanted to talk about that too.
oh, what?
Oh, and you listened to that while you were reading? That's crazy. This moment
What?
where they're like at home and they're like, why is it so quiet? Why do we keep hearing classical music? And then I think it was their father that comes home and it's like a weird tradition to play classical music during a coup.
Oh,
And then like
yes, I do
that's like when
remember
the
this coming up.
assassination happened. Yeah.
I do remember when
Interesting.
that came up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
that was,
I
eerie.
almost forgot about that moment.
yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Wow. And I probably listened to that this morning and completely forgot about it. I'm a fail. But yeah, no, that is super super airy.
Hmm.
There were other pieces for each coup. Yeah, I do remember them. They identified the pieces that were played.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
Hmm.
really interesting. Mm-hmm.
Good one. Yeah. So there were. Yeah, I do remember that being like a really interesting observation. That was the type of stuff I wanted. Like, I would love more of it because it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, give me more.
Hmm. Yeah, the book had a lot of really interesting details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I could see that similarity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, for Gabby, this would be basically his version of 9/11.
Yeah, it's the defining
Yeah.
trauma of his childhood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Thank you, Chloe Ray, for bringing that up.
I know. That was perfect. Right at the end.
Right at the end.
Thank
So,
you.
and so any final thoughts, guys, as we start to wrap up?
My final thoughts are that I just want to say, like, I know some people said this read kind of more like a memoir than a
Mm,
fiction book. Um, I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about the author's life, but it does kind of seem like heavily based on his life.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
He was in fond and mother, and yeah. I mean, it might be like a fictional biography, maybe. So yeah,
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was like heavily based on his life, but like fictionalized. Who else did that?
Yeah.
Jim Carrey did that.
Yeah. There are a few people that have done it. Like, if
Yeah.
that would kind of make it interesting and explain why it might read that way.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good to
yeah.
know.
Yeah. That makes a lot of things make sense actually.
Yeah, that does. What about you, Noelle? Any closing thoughts?
um Gosh, I my closing thoughts are how did I not read anything about this before this book? And I'm gonna read more because it was like such a specific and traumatic and interesting time in history that otherwise I would not know anything about really.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Going back
Okay.
to what Annie was saying. Yeah, I mean, similar to you, like, I definitely have not read anywhere near enough about this time period, and so I definitely want to explore it. And I wrote down the memoir that Annie
Me too.
mentioned earlier because I want
Yes,
to check
I
that out.
recommend.
because I do feel like it would be interesting to kind of have read this one and then read that one, not like soon after. But it was like, to me, it was, some of the writing in this book was just phenomenal, as I've said a few times. So I'd definitely be interested in reading more by the author too, just because I do think that he has like a very distinctive like writing style and way with words that I really appreciated overall.
Yeah.
So those are my closing thoughts. But we'll wrap it up, guys. And just want to thank everyone who watched our little live show, who shared their thoughts. We appreciate it always. And of course, we have a March book. Annie, do you want to talk about it? I know you're very excited.
Yes. Our March book is Strange Beasts in China by manga. As well, short book. And the live show is going to be on my channel the first Tuesday of April. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes,
Thank you guys.
We are all looking forward to that. And as always, there's running commentary on the books in the Discord, which I still need to set up those channels. But that's happening. It's only March 1, so I'm not too far behind. But yeah, I am looking forward to reading that as well. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we'll see you at the next Found in Translation live show.
Woo.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.